Tonight we have Joe Halende, who is a lawyer and a political analyst, and Dr. Maxwell Miyawa, who is a legal scholar and practicing advocate of the High Court of Kenya. We're coming back to the gentleman in just a moment, but this is a story that we must tell you. It's a sad story because a family in Eastleigh right here in Nairobi is in mourning following the mysterious murder of a mother and her two daughters. Now, the three had been reportedly missing before their mutilated bodies were found in different locations right here in the capital. Marion Barasa reports.
The woman, identified as Waris Dawood, had earlier left her home to seek skin treatment within Eastleigh but failed to return home. Worried of what could be keeping the elderly lady, the daughter along with her niece set out to look for her. What would follow later came as a shock for the rest of the family. The three dead bodies were retrieved in Bahati, Parklands and Machakos with similar injuries, only to be identified as the missing family members. Their last moments to be seen were captured on CCTV, where the daughter and the niece could be seen boarding a vehicle, never to be seen alive again. Elsewhere in Kajiado, a family is mourning the death of a 24-year-old who disappeared last Friday. Her body was discovered in a swamp in Gong, Kajiado County. Reporting for KTN News, Marion Barasa.
All right, very sad indeed. Hopefully the families will get justice. We're back to our discussion. And gentlemen, I'd just like you to take a few moments because we ran a story. We interviewed the Kiambu Senator tonight on the issue of the term limits. And I see a lot of people continue to react on this. And in fact, it was our big Q tonight where we were asking, should it be increased to 7 or decreased to 4 or maintained at 5? And I'll give you just a minute each to weigh in on this topic. Dr. Maxwell, is this government testing waters?
I always refrain from making political comments. I think it's within actually the right of every other citizen to propose a constitutional amendment. When one does it at the level of the National Assembly or the Senate, they are right to do so, including any other individual. One thing that probably members of parliament need to know, members of the Senate, National Assembly, including the presidency, is the clauses that will require a referendum. For instance, if you're seeking to change the term limit, term of office of the president, you will require a referendum. Politically speaking, are we ready for a referendum at this moment in time? Post-Gen Z movement, with these altercations in government, I don't think we are ready. For members of parliament who probably may want to reduce the term of members of parliament to 4 years, remember, this is like, kicking the bread, or shooting yourself in your own foot. Will members of parliament achieve a threshold that cuts on their lifeline, especially for those who hold these positions as a career?
Okay.
So I think all these debates are probably premature, and they are meant to divert attention from the real issues that affect Kenyans. One of the real issues that affect Kenyans is having a new deputy president in office, perhaps as soon as possible.
All right, Joe.
This is what you get when you go in an election and elect some of these leaders. This is what you get. The priorities of the current of the government right now is to have stability in the country and to have the country going forward. Because as we speak now, you may think we don't have the Minister of Education, because our younger brothers started exam yesterday, but you may think there's nothing going on
in this country
because of some of the politicians we have decided to elect in parliament and in Senate, because they tend to misread the mood in the country.
Or they don't care about the mood in the country.
Yes, or they don't care the mood in the country. Yeah. No wonder the Gen Z were ready to go to storm parliament. I'm one of those people who are against going to parliament, but I'm one of those people who is ready to hold some of these leaders accountable.
Okay.
There is a thin line between holding leaders accountable and going and banning parliament. But on this one, I totally agree. The people who are pushing this agenda to do with extending term limits or reducing term limits, they have a mischief. And they are ready to take Kenyans to a long exercise that is going to take them into a field where there are no goals. You are just running around,
but you don't know where you're headed.
Don't know where you're
headed. So they want to
yes.
keep us busy. Yes. Your reflection, Alena, on this proposal?
3 things real quick. First, we have to question where does those conversations of the term limits obtain from? So if we look at the first one that was advanced by Senator Cherargei of Nandi County, we can clearly judge that conversation obtained from his overzealousness to please the head of state at the time, and that is why he felt he was being flowery around the head of state by that conversation. But I totally doubt that is a conversation that maybe the president also subscribes to. It's purely out of place. Secondly, is a conversation to slash the term limit to 4 years. If you listened quite well to the senator, the good senator of Kiambu, as he was trying to say why he came up with this, there is something that he actually said. He said it's because he thinks from where he sits that Kenyans are not willing to stay another year with this government. So then he thinks it's important to reduce their time in power. So then you try to understand when everything was fine and Gachagua had not been impeached and the mountain was out of touch, this government was fine, you know, and suddenly when some things change, then he thinks the term limit then should reduce. So what I'm trying to say is that these are episodic conversations that those people are bound to forget them anytime it comes. Then number 2 is to the people of Kenya. Where does this conversation leave us? So this is my encouragement to the people of Kenya, that we have very important jurisprudence and case law around the basic structure doctrine that prevents us from falling into this ditch that the two legislators or lawmakers are trying to dig for us. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an uphill task to get that threshold that takes us into a referendum to be able to change the basic structure of our governance. So that is where Kenyans should obtain solace that nothing bad is really going to happen. Yeah. And then lastly, I think that it also goes down to priorities. I think it questions then the kind of leaders that we have and how our electoral systems end up producing for us square pegs and round holes. And it's a time to maybe examine them one after the other.
Yeah, we think the people we vote, and that was Joe's point. Gentlemen, we have about 15 minutes, and I'd like to deal with this issue of what's happening tomorrow. And averagely, how many days do you gentlemen think we have before this issue, before the High Court can be settled? I know they're dealing tomorrow afternoon with the issue of their recusal, and the hearing might go late into the evening because there's so many parties. I mean, only consolidating these cases could possibly take 2 hours. So, Maxwell, where are we headed, and what is the period you think it will take reasonably before we have the deputy president sworn in?
Ken, you know what? Court timelines or diary is not dictated by political necessities or exigencies. It will depend on the diary of the judges. But it will also depend on how parties prosecute the matters before the court. And I know it's always a matter of a legal strategy, particularly for a party who is enjoying right to delay a case. And that's why you're seeing a barrage of application upon application. It is probably in the interest of a respondent who is restrained by orders to have a matter heard expeditiously. But I think the High Court is in a position to ensure that this matter of great profound public importance is heard and dispensed with within a reasonable period of time. In my view, I think it shouldn't take 6 months before this matter is concluded. But I also think 6 months at the very least is the most reasonable time for this matter to be with us. So the High Court should stay firm, should dispense with frivolous and vexatious applications, and the High Court should go straight into the hearing of the content of the matter. I know there are before the court 3-judge bench applications for recusal, among other applications. But I think, one thing that we teach our students in our law school, public university law schools, especially those who go to law schools in Kenya, is that you do not get into personal and personalized attacks against the court or against the judge. There is no need for vitriol against a judge. In fact, if you are a smart trial advocate, one of the areas that you shouldn't touch or no-go zones is a personalized attack against the court. Okay. So I think some people are watching and they really need to be careful how they prosecute their matters. It may actually end up being in the prejudice of the person they are representing.
Exactly. And Dr. Max, does it matter that in public interest, looking at the position of a deputy president, a heartbeat away from presidency, and anything could happen? I know this has been said several times, that what is this something that could happen that necessitates this urgency? So does it matter that in public interest we need a substantive deputy president? And I want you to paint a picture for me before I come to the gentleman here. What could happen today with an impeached deputy president, deputy president in waiting who's not been sworn in, and something happens to the president and is unable to execute the functions of his office? What happens?
Nothing will happen. Absolutely nothing will happen. The Constitution anticipates.
What do you mean nothing will happen? What do you mean?
The deputy president and the president dies, the Speaker of the National Assembly takes over. It's very clear in the Constitution, nothing happens.
And what does the Speaker do?
Yes?
What does the Speaker do? He holds this as a transitional head of state for 90 days as he organizes an election. But remember, we don't much paint the picture.
In the interim position.
Exactly. But our picture is different because we don't have an IEBC that must be appointed by a president in office. So what happens to us? That is my question. Just look wholesome to our situation as it is right now.
As I was explaining, we have a president who is sitting in office. We have a deputy president who has been removed from office. And as your question goes, what happens if anything happens to the president? There will be no vacancy, at least for that interim period. The Speaker of the National Assembly will assume that office. Yes, these are weighty constitutional law questions. We do not want to get into a situation or such a quandary. And that's what I'm saying. The High Court should dispense with this matter in the shortest period possible. Of course, respecting and upholding the rights of an individual, particularly one who is a complainant in this particular situation.
Okay.
Of course, the other thing that we have to be sensitive to is the absence of the IEBC in this particular case.
Okay, great. I'm coming back to you for your closing remarks, but let me bring the same discussion here to the two gentlemen, Joe and Alenda. This is very important. One, he says absolutely nothing happens, but this is a question that has surfaced so many times, and I understand from the point Max is an idealist, right? That is what I read from him. He's an idealist. So the deputy president is not there. One has been impeached. What people need to understand is there a way that this can be reversed in such an instant that the deputy president impeached can interim sit? And what happens to that question of the IBC that needs to be appointed by a substantive sitting head of state? And secondly, does it matter that there is that need right now? And is that period, he says 6 months, cast in stone, or there's a way it can be expedited to ensure it happens in a less period? That's to you, gentlemen. I'll begin with Joe.
To just put some context to show that this matter is weighty, we are in Africa. For example, we had an incident across our neighbor here in Tanzania sometimes back.
When Magufuli
died.
Yes.
For at least 2 days, there was tension in that country. And you know Tanzania, how peaceful they are with their politics as compared to us. And you know how our politics is done in this country. It is emotional, it is regional based, it's basically tribal politics and alignments and realignments here and there. So what we need to do as from tomorrow, and what the courts need to do as from tomorrow, is to consolidate the matter and go straight into the real issue, into the real content of the matter, and expedite the matter in the shortest time possible. We always, for the last 2 elections in this country, we have had weighty matters at the Supreme Court, and the constitutional timeline is 14 days. And those matters are normally dispensed, and the country moves on.
Like the presidential election.
Yes, the presidential election petition. Yeah. So, if you compare, if we can say the removal of Rigathi Gachagua is that weighty matter, and we compare it to the presidential election. So, in the shortest time possible, for me, within 10 days,
it should be done.
It should be done.
10 days,
so that
6 months, 10 days.
Yes.
Okay. Alain.
For me, I think nations are not served by their constitutions, but rather they are served by men and women who breathe life to what the constitution has for that country. So primarily for us, it's the courts that have to breathe that life to the constitution. And more importantly, if you observed what happened in the courts after the several applications that have been forwarded by Rigathi Gachagua, there has been a lot of bullying of the court and bullying of the other side, and then basically turning the court into an argument that nothing really material can move. And that is a strategy that the applicants have used in the courts for the last 2 days to ensure that they do not really get to the end of the rope. But as it were, if the judges must be very firm and starting from tomorrow, so that they define what is it that we are looking at, and all these other things that do not really have a lot of premium in the matters of the day can be sorted out much later. If you look back at the petition of Raila too in 2017, there were other petitions that were questioning several things, but the bench at the time chose to look at one petition that was basically asking if the repeat election was done in a constitutional manner. In fact, up to right now, there are certain petitions that were filed at that time which have not even been dispensed of by the Supreme Court. Yes. So that is the kind of wisdom that the current panel of 3 should import into this process, so that we deal with the first issue that the applicant has in the court. And if that happens, then that way we could dispense of this matter even in 2 weeks, because our law does not anticipate this time that we are going through, where we are in a period of uncertainty. The law anticipates one process leads into the other. That's why it says after the vote has been taken in Senate and the DP ceases to hold office, then it says in 14 days, the president will nominate someone. After 14 days, it says in 60 days, within 60 days, the parliament shall vet that person, and that person shall be sworn in.
It doesn't give a minimum, and gives a maximum. And in fact, that maximum raised a lot of questions. They were asking, what is the hurry? I remember that was something that came out from the contest that was going on in court today. Gentlemen, I'm coming back to give you your closing remarks, and I'd be asking, is it time to rethink the whole thing, the whole period for impeachment? Because every time we have a presidential election, there is that need to stretch it longer. They say there's no justice, it's rushed and all that. But remember the anxiety of the country. So I'll be coming back for your reflection on if we should rethink this or we should wait to see the outcome, then we can rethink the whole impeachment. But now, let's play the video of the week. And we get it from this year's Mashujaa Day celebration that was in the county of Kwale. Let's take a look.
There was concerted effort that I should not go to Kwale for the celebration. Wilson Airport were told that I should not go through Wilson Airport. All owners of helicopters were told that I should not be allowed to use any of them to go to Kwale.
Our heroes did not hail from one village or speak one language. Our heroes are numerous and diverse, united by a principled commitment to confront an unjust, exclusive, and oppressive system in pursuit of a noble vision of national liberation.
First time I did hear any of the CAF remarks. That was not even subtle. It was a direct salvo. But gentlemen, you have a minute each to close the show for us. And we'll begin from Dr. Maxwell Miawa, rethinking the whole impeachment timeline, or should we wait for this to end so that we can understand? Because this is one stretch of the Constitution that we had not tested or tried. For the first time in the year of our Lord 2024, 14 years later, we are testing this. Dr. Maxwell.
And for the reason that the Senate did not follow due process by according an individual what we call the right to a fair hearing, we should not repeat that at the High Court, at the judicial institution where rights are heard and determined and decisions taken. Otherwise, it will be the same circus. Let due process follow. Let each and every individual be given a chance and an opportunity to be heard. Taking into account, of course, taking cognizance of the fact that this is a matter of profound national importance and that the exigencies of the moment dictate that the matter should be heard expeditiously. So it's a delicate balancing act, actually. It's a very delicate balancing act that the High Court has to take into account, and also to avoid any frivolous application that parties may want to bring to prevent the expeditious hearing of the matter. That's our concept for now.
Thank you, Dr. Miawa. Joe?
Kenya is a democratic country. In a democracy like ours, we have strong democratic institutions that the people believe in. And I want to believe that the trust level that Kenyans have with our democratic institutions, more so judiciary, will help us to navigate this problem that we are having. And our hope is that judiciary will dispense this matter in timely manner and offers a solution that we can be able to move on as a country, so that we can have a government that is moving on, a government that is doing its duty to the people that voted it in place.
Thank you, Halende. And finally, Alenga.
My final remarks is that this impeachment is a novel experience in trying to breathe life to certain articles of the Constitution, 150, 149, and 145, and many others. And therefore, this matter has found itself into the gates of the courts. And I do hope that the High Court and the other subsequent courts that will adjudicate these matters will give us an enduring jurisprudence that will guide us through subsequent events of impeachments and so on. For the sake of public interest, it is important that the courts remain firm to ensure that Kenyans are not taken for a ride with the duplicitous applications that are getting their way into court, that the court would be able to sieve through and see what matters are of public interest and dispense those in good time.
3 minutes past the top of the hour. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing your perspective. And I also want to thank you for participating in our poll tonight, where we asked you, should the term limit be increased to 7 for all elective posts or decreased to 4? And you have overwhelmingly, like Parliament did last week, said no. And it's time to actually look at our governance afresh. For me, my parting shot is we need to stretch this constitution with this article, see if we can impeach the deputy president and test if we can impeach the president as Kenyans. I think that's where we go. Kufa Makanga, Kufa Dereva, right? That's where to go. So, Dr. Maxwell Miawa, joining us live from Naivasha. Thank you so much for coming. He's a scholar, and of course, he's also a practicing lawyer. And more important, he was my classmate. So we have some clever people in the room tonight. Thanks, Daktari. And Joe Halende, thank you so much. Also an advocate of the High Court and a political analyst. And of course, Alenga.